This video is a draft version of Punishment. This version was made in 2016 and was worked on for a short time before I got a new computer. This is the file that was left on my old laptop. This is the first draft of Punishment. After the story, I will also give you the notes for the rest of the original version of Punishment, and what a Punishment 2 would have looked like. Please enjoy this video.
Chapter 1. My parents have always kept the same two pictures sitting on the fireplace. They both sat in the same frame and they both were taken when I was in 4th grade. Ever since my 4th grade year I have always tried to hide them when my friends and my extended family would come over. But somehow, they were always found and placed front and centered. The picture at first glance is innocent enough, a girl sitting on a set of bleachers grinning ear to ear with a sash over her saying Easter Princess in little yellow block letters. Even though she hates being dressed up, she is wearing a lacy pink dress with white tights and black dress shoes. She was also forced by her mother to keep the tiara that she had won for winning Easter Princess on for the few seconds of that picture. In reality she isn't too much in a hurry to care about winning Easter Princess, and instead she can't wait for the moment when her mother allows her to go ahead and put pants so she can ride the rides that are in the background. But if you look closely to the picture you start seeing odd things, like how my 4th grade school picture and that picture looked eerily similar. I mean, if you look close enough, my facial features and her facial features were almost the same and our hair was the same shaggy length. To the untrained eye you might just throw it off as just two cousins that look the same, but there was a secret that I never spoke about, one that changed my life forever. When I went to Little Ridge Elementary School, my dad was the head principal there. He was known to be strict when it came to his students acting out. To me though, he somehow mostly let me off with a warning, or at the very least a day in the timeout room. I guess it's because I'm his only kid or something. That of course gave me the idea that I was untouchable by the school's rules. Kids were afraid of me, the thought that I might use my daddy powers for evil scared some students into not being around me, earning me respect as the meanest, toughest kid in elementary. Of course, that changed by one stupid mistake. I remember it was the Thursday before Easter break. I sat on the playground bench with my two best friends Eric and Alex. We watched as kids in our grade played on the playground. Eric of course sat with his nose in his Game Boy, not paying attention to what Alex and I were talking about. "So Adam, what do you think of the new student?" Alex asked, pointing at Gracie Thomas. Gracie arrived at the school during the first part of the week and was already best friends with most of the girls. She had long brown hair and blue eyes. Today she wore a blue dress that wasn't part of the school uniforms, which made her stand out more. I regretted next week when she would have her uniform and she would be stuck looking like the other girls on the playground. To tell you the truth, I did like her. Of course, if I told the guys that I would be taken out of the group and counted as a sissy, and there was no other fatal punishment than to be counted as a sissy in the 4th grade. Being an outcast and forced to play with the girls or the other wimpy boys would have been bad for my image. Eric looked up from his Game Boy and somehow knew that I wasn't going to tell the truth to them. In fact, he caught me in the act of watching Gracie with more affection than I should have. "If you like her then you wouldn't do anything mean to her, right?" Eric asked. I remained quiet, and that was sign enough to the guys. They pushed me around a little, calling me a sissy because after all we are men and we don't like girls. "How about you go play with Johnny down there? Maybe you can help him pick his nose," Alex said, pointing to Johnny on the other side of the playground. He was already 2 knuckles deep into his nose. "I don't like Gracie," I said. "Gracie is a girl and girls are nasty and gross, so that means if we hang around them then we are nasty and gross too," I said as if I was reading it right out of a textbook. "Then I bet you can't do something mean to her," Eric said. Alex and I looked at him with wide eyes. I gulped. I didn't know what to do, so I closed my eyes and whispered the fatal 2 words that started everything. "Name it," I said. Eric grinned from ear to ear. Mrs. Yolkman stood with her back towards us as she wrote on the blackboard. With 3 months till retirement she wasn't in the best of shape to be teaching 4th graders, and it showed every time that she entered the classroom. Since she couldn't hear too well, it made it easy for Eric and I to whisper back and forth to each other without her knowing. Gracie sat in front of me writing down the notes. Her hair was draped over the chair in a ponytail that she had just put up a few minutes earlier. I felt sorry for what I had to do, but I had to prove I was no sissy and that I could be mean to Gracie. I pulled out the scissors from my book bag and waited for the best time. Mrs. Yolkman was still facing away from us as she wrote down notes for us to copy. I don't know what, maybe it was about US history or something, I don't know. Eric was next to me whispering to me to hurry up, so after one large gulp I put the blades of the scissors around her long hair. At that moment time stood still for me. Eric sat the open mouth as the rest of the students looked up at the backboard. I didn't hear Eric whisper stop, I was just too much in the moment. I closed the scissors slowly around Gracie's hair and snipped. In one motion Gracie turned around screaming. I held her freshly cut hair in my fist, a shock to put it down. Eric sat next to me to muck in shock to do anything else. I looked back at the rest of the class, all of them looked at Gracie, then at me with her hair held in my hands. "You idiot!" Gracie yelled, turning back to me, her eyes were already tearing up. She removed her glasses and put her hands to her face as she sobbed. I didn't say anything as the classroom became dead silent. I felt every set of eyes look upon Gracie and then to me as Gracie stared with vengeance. Mrs. Yolkman charged down the classroom and grabbed the hand that still had the hair. I wanted to let go of it, but I couldn't get my brain to outsource the job to my hand. "Just wait till your father hears this one!" Mrs. Yolkman yelled, pulling me from my chair and causing my desk to flip over, scattering all my stuff all over the floor. Mrs. Yolkman dragged me to the classroom door, where I looked over at Gracie. 2 girls were already leaning over her trying to comfort her. I was dragged down the stairs to the first floor as Mrs. Yolkman held on. The speed that she was pulling was faster than I had expected, and I fought to catch up with her. Dash! My dad's office sat tucked away behind the school's main office. Right in front of Dad's office sat a little reception area where Mrs. Yolkman would drop me off, write my dad a note and leave, but this time was different. Normally the secretary, an older lady, would stop Mrs. Yolkman from going any further, but her rage tore through that blockade as she threw the door open with me in tow. My father didn't even turn around. He wasn't even surprised that I was being thrown into the office by Mrs. Yolkman, even though this was the first time. "What did he do?" Dad asked, but he stopped when he saw the long blonde hair that I was holding in my hands. Dad let out a big sigh and rubbed his temples as he thought about which girl in my class had long blonde hair. "Who is it this time?" Dad asked, grabbing the strands of hair from my fist and examining it. "Gracie, sir, I was teaching my class when this happened," Mrs. Yolkman said. Dad looked at me with his eyes down. I could tell he was mad, but I wasn't worried. All he ever did was sticking me into the box, and once we got home I would have to stay in my room for a week. "Adam, this is the 5th girl this year that you have been sent to my office for," Dad said. I didn't say anything. I knew how many girls I had picked on and I didn't care either way. "Adam, I don't know what to do with you. You got the rest of the day in the box, but I'm going to let your mother figure your punishment this time," Dad said. I sat in the timeout room for the rest of the day. It really wasn't too bad. The room was only just a small room that branched out from the main office. Papers from my desk were stacked up on a smaller desk inside the room. I sat down in the chair wondering what I was going to happen. Dad always punished me at school and at home, but this time Mom wasn't on it. Once 3 o'clock came around, I darted out of the office and onto the bus, where I sat on the bus and sat next to Eric. "Gracie went home early," Eric said. "She was crying." "Then you shouldn't have made me do it," I said, even though I didn't care. The only thing Dad would do was ground me in my room. "By this time next week, the whole thing will brush over." The bus pulled away from the school slowly. I knew for a fact that I was home free till Mom and Dad came home. Once they did come home, however, I was dead meat. Dash! Mom and Dad both came home at the same time, something that they hardly do. Dad walked in first and went straight for his office while Mom started making dinner. As carefully as I could, I shut my door and hid on my bed in my room, huddled in a ball until they called me down. I sat at my spot at the table. Dinner was still cooking, 2 pots were on the stove boiling, so I knew the talk was happening, and soon after the punishment. Mom sat down in front of me. She shook her head, as she quickly slid the pink slips with Mrs. Yolkman's writing on it over to me. There were 2 different notes, one from disrupting the class, the other for cutting Gracie's hair. "Adam, I don't know what to do with you," Mom sighed. "We've tried to ground you, but it doesn't seem to work." I silently agreed with her. Nothing they were doing was keeping me from proving to my friends that I wasn't no sissy. Mom bent over and picked up a large white box and put it on the table in front of me. She let me look at it and questioned for a minute. I didn't know what was in the box, but it scared me. "So, I'm going to try a different approach," she said, turning the box around so I could see all the different sides to the box. Finally, she opened the box and dumped out what was inside. Pieces of clothing fell onto the table in front of me. I looked over the clothing that fell out. My eyes widened and my heart sank as I examined each article. It wasn't boy clothes but girl clothes. Each article of clothing looked more girly than the last. Mom picked up a dress out of the pile and held it up for me to see. She looked at it for a second before facing me and smiling. "You wanted to pick on girls, then you can be a girl," she said, smiling. I looked over to Dad for help, but instead he remained rich almost the same way that he looked at a student that had been acting up in a classroom. That image of my dad has stuck with me for years to come. I had no help from him at all, and unless I did something fast I might be stuck wearing these clothes. This was no way to prove to my friends that I wasn't a sissy, this was the complete opposite. "What?" I asked. I stood up from the table trying to be defiant and show her that I wasn't going to wear these girly clothes without a fight. Mom just ignored me and continued to sort out the rest of the clothing. A pair of underwear were set down first. They were pink with a bow in the 65 front. She also laid down a white undershirt, white tights, and black dress shoes. They were all extremely girly. "I'm not wearing this," I said, sliding the stuff off the table. I knew the effort was futile, but I had to try something. If my friends saw this, what would they think? They would call me sissy for sure. I would have to be hanging around Johnny helping him pick his own nose, or Victoria helping her collect bugs off the field. I would be an outcast. "I think you will." Gracie was even nice enough to lend you some clothes," Mom said as Dad laughed in the background. I turned red as I thought of Gracie picking out clothes for me to wear. She must have thought that this was a big joke because nothing in the pile lacked girlishness. "Adam, you will wear this and other girl clothes for the rest of Easter break. I am tired of you disobeying me. I froze. For Easter my family always went to my aunt's house in Missouri. I thought about asking, but I didn't want to make the situation worse. If anything, I pray that Mom and Dad would give me a big scare and send me up to my room with boy clothes still on," as they laughed downstairs. "If you're a good little girl, your punishment will end before school begins, so your little friends will not even know." Gracie even agreed not to tell anyone. "If you don't agree, your punishment will go on and on," Mom said. I froze. I didn't know what to do or say. I was stuck as Mom bent down and grabbed the pile of clothes from the floor and resorted them out in front of me. I thought I recognized the dress from Gracie's first day, but I wasn't sure since it wasn't on her now. The dress was black with little pink flowers along the neckline. The bottom of the dress was silky and had my layers of netting making the dress puff out. I really didn't want to wear it, and if Mom and Dad were trying to scare me, they were doing a good job. Dad walked around the table and opened a closet door and took out a pink suitcase. "Trust me, Adam, we are not giving in," he said sternly as he opened it, revealing a few days' worth of girly clothes all folded neatly in the suitcase. I wondered if all of these were Gracie's clothes, but I knew better than to ask. "So are you going to go upstairs to put them on?" Mom asked, trying to hand me the pile with the dress on top. "I mean, you are a girl after all, and you can't be seen in those boyish clothes, you know." I raised an eyebrow and hoped to God that I wouldn't have to wear it, but the odds were slowly not in my favor. I didn't have time to think of an excuse. I could only stand there as Mom held the clothes out to me. I didn't want to take them, and if this was just a joke, then it stopped being funny a long time ago. Finally, Dad motioned to Mom and Mom grabbed me and started to pull my shirt off. I jumped, surprised that this was happening to me. Dad came around with the white spaghetti strap undershirt and started rolling up the bottom so it would be easier to put it over my head. I watched held down as the girly item with its spaghetti straps went over my head. My arms were forced through the straps as Mom adjusted them. I started to cry. I wished that this would just end with a warning, but Mom nor did Dad care. Dad undid my jeans and pulled my pants and my boxers as I tried kicking and squirming, trying to keep them on me, but Mom held my feet down, so my kicking failed. I could feel the pink underwear being pulled up and in place. I screamed with anger as I watched in horror. "Please don't," I sobbed, but they continued. Dad rolled up the tights and put them on my feet. I managed to kick them off, but Dad just bent down and grabbed them on the floor. He slid them on while I was kicking and screaming and put them to my waist. The black dress shoes were slid onto my feet. Mom helped buckle them. I was angry and mortified as I stood there wearing the girly clothes. Dad grabbed the dress, the last item on the list of making me the biggest sissy in the school. I stood in terror as he bunched up the dress and put it over my head. I could feel it as it fell and around my knees. I heard the zipper of the dress go up and a bow being made around my waist with the black sash. I was now trapped in the dress. I wanted to get out of it. I felt exposed for Mom and Dad dressing me. Mom took my hair, which was long for a boy, but long enough for a tomboyish girl's, and she brushed it out, making it look even more girly. Good thing you wasted your haircut money on those stupid video games, or else we would have a problem, huh? Mom whispered in my ear. I cringed a little inside as I thought about how weird it would be if I was stuck wearing this and had a buzz cut like all my friends did. I felt humiliated in the dress and I didn't want to move. Dad took out his phone and snapped a quick picture of me. I went to eject, but Mom was over me, ready to pounce if I said something wrong. "You're a sweet girl," Mom said with a little giggle. "Now you are to stay a girl for the next few days, or else your dad will post those pictures of you at the school," Mom added. "But Mom," I said, but was instantly cut off. "If you don't want your friends to know that you like to wear dresses, then I suggest that you cooperate with us," Mom said. "What about Aunt George's house?" I asked, sobbing. I was looking forward to the trip, but now I had mixed feelings. They wouldn't make me go as a girl, would they? "We already made arrangements, she can't wait to see her little niece," Mom said. I couldn't fully process what was going on. Did Mom honestly expect me to go all the way to Missouri plus go to the annual Easter egg hunt as a girl? Before I could eject, Mom went and grabbed the dinner plates and had handed them to me. I took them and started putting them on the table without a sound. "Good girl," Mom said as she walked over to the stove to stir the pasta that was now boiling in the pot. I wanted to scream, and I hopped and prayed that my friends wouldn't come over and ask to see me. I found myself purposely making sharp turns just so I could feel the dress. It was a wired feeling and I didn't know what to think of it. The bottom of the dress lightly bumped against my legs. I'm not going to lie, I liked the feeling of it, but I couldn't let Mom know. That was the last thing I needed. But to my horror, Mom noticed and smiled. "Having fun, Amanda?" Mom asked. I looked at her confused. "That's your name now, Amanda," Mom said as she finished up cooking her famous homemade fried chicken. "Couldn't you find one that's a little more boyish?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Nope, sorry, Gracie picked it out for you," she said. I froze when she said that. I couldn't believe this was happening. I was going to be the laughingstock of the whole school. Johnny Nosepicker was even going to look down on me. I had to sit down at the table, this was just too much for me to handle. Mom turned around and saw my legs spread apart, a big no-no for girls. "Oh honey, you can't sit like that," Mom shrieked, walking over to me. "You got to sit like a lady." I looked at her oddly before she finally pulled out another char from the table. "Like this," she said as she proceeded to teach me how to sit down like a lady in a dress would. "See, with our legs together, Amanda," Mom said, so I closed my legs and also put the bottom of the dress around my knees. I couldn't believe how hard it was to make sure I properly stayed ladylike, and I kind of felt sorry for the girly girls in my class who always wore the uniform jumper every day to class. "That's good, honey," Mom said. She went back to the kitchen and started fixing our plate. I started to mock her behind her back, but stopped when I heard Dad's footsteps coming in. I didn't want to make him even more angry, so I just decided to keep my thoughts to myself. I hated to be in this, and I wanted to be out of it as soon as I could. I decided in my mind that I would go along with this until after the trip, and then I could be a boy again. I meant, how long could they keep me dressed up as a girl anyways? We ate dinner in silence. I kept quiet, I didn't want to provoke them any more than what I already did. After I finished eating everything on my plate, including the veggies, I started to go up to my room but was stopped by Mom. "Amanda, before you go to your room, please clear the table," Mom said. I stopped and looked back to her. All I wanted to do was hide in my room, and Mom was forcing me to stay out here. I wanted to roll my eyes but decided not to, in fear that it would make her more upset. I slowly walked around the table and picked up each plate and silverware off of the table. Once I was finally able to go to my room, I shut the door carefully and walked to my full-size mirror on the other side of the door. Mom was right, I looked like a girl, which only made me madder. I didn't want to look, act, or be a girl in any ways. So in a desperate attempt, I pulled the dress up and tried to pull it over my head, but I couldn't get past my waist. Frustrated, I let go off the dress and stood there in front of the mirror wondering if I was missing something. I remembered the bow and the zipper and untied the bow but couldn't reach the zipper to unzip it. I hoped the dress would come up even with the zipper still up and pulled the bottom of the dress up and over my knee just to find that the top of the dress was still very stuck on me. I didn't hear Mom walking in while I was trying to pull the dress off of me. I froze, scared to move and scared to do anything. Was this going to set her off? "Amanda, what are you doing?" she asked in a stern voice. I put the dress down and smoothed it out. "Nothing," I said as fast as I could. Mom of course didn't believe me. "I'm running you some bath water." Mom said, "I have your nightgown ready for you too." I sighed. Now I was to sleep like a girl too? "Why can't I wear my boy clothes to bed?" I asked. I didn't want to wear the nightgown while I slept. Honestly, I knew this was going to happen, but I prayed it wouldn't off. "No, young lady, you're going to be 110% a girl now, or you can show off your pretty legs to your friends on Tuesday while you're wearing the girls' school uniform," she said before unzipping the dress. Mom made me walk across the hall with only the pair of underwear and the undershirt still on. I got into the bathroom and the smell of lavender filled my nose. Bubbles filled the steamy bathtub. Mom stood outside of the door and waited as I took off the rest of the clothes and handed them to her through the doorway. I slowly got into the bathtub. My nose was filled with the scent of the lavender bubble bath, and all I want to do was hurry up and get out of the tub. But somehow I was completely taken off guard by how the bath felt, and somehow I started to like it. I laid in there for an hour until Mom started banging on the door for me to get out. I got out of the tube and grabbed my towel to dry off. On the sink sat night clothes. Instead of the Spider-Man pajamas I was hoping for, laying there on the counter was a pair of blue underwear and a light blue frozen nightgown. I sighed, tired and defeated, as I promised myself that the second I'm alone in my room for the night I was going to take them off and put my boy clothes on. I slid the baby blue nightgown over my head. I felt the soft material around my legs, and it felt weird to my little boy brain. I walked out of the bathroom where Mom saw me. She looked at me up and down, almost impressed that she didn't have to fight me into the clothes. "Well, don't you look sweet?" she said with a smile. I rolled my eyes and went to my room, where I laid on my bed waiting to fall asleep. I laid in my bed staring at the ceiling tiles, thinking about how the day is gone. I wish that this was just a dream and that I would just wake up tomorrow and restart this miserable day. The only thing I could think of was that day one is at least over. However, tomorrow is another day. Chapter 2, Friday. I woke up both surprised and disappointed that I was still wearing the nightgown. That night I had tossed and turned as I dreamed about being stuck wearing girls' clothes permanently. I laid in the bed debating on if I should go ahead and put on some boy clothes, or if I should keep the nightgown on. I looked over at my closet. The door was halfway open and I could see that they were all in there ready to be worn. Deciding against changing, I walked downstairs where Mom was cooking a light breakfast and Dad was getting the rest of our stuff ready for the trip. I examined the mess that Dad had made and debated whether I should go back upstairs and pretend to sleep. "Good morning, Amanda," Mom said. I jumped. I didn't expect to be spotted. Mom gave me a plate of pancakes and put some clothes on the table in front of me. I hoped that Mom wasn't going to give me girl clothes today and that I could go to Missouri in peace wearing normal good old boy clothes. Of course, like all my hopes that weekend, they were shattered once Mom slipped me the bag full of clothes. "Here, put these on and go help your dad," she said. I picked up the clothes and went to my room. I still had the mindset that if I play along, they would be finished with this game fast. I grabbed the yellow pair of underwear on, then was a colorful circle all around, and it made me wonder why girls have such colorful underwear. I put them on first and then sorted out what I thought was a dress but turned out to be a shirt and a skirt. The shirt was purple within silky, the sleeves just went over my shoulder and lace covered the sleeves, bottom and color of my shirt. Next the skirt, also purple. It was made from the same type of fabric as my gym shorts were. I slid it on and around my waist. I never thought that I would ever have to wear a skirt, but I can't complain. I felt the openness of the bottom. I then put on the socks, which had pink heels in the toes. Then I put on the pink and black tennis shoes. I left my room so I could help Dad with his panic. I stared at the monstrous pile before him and I was amazed how much stuff we needed to take with up to Missouri. Scattered bags roamed the living room and Dad was in the middle of the mess putting the finishing items into their proper place. "Take this to the car," he said, throwing me one of the bags. I could see the car in front of the house and not in the garage where it is normally kept. I could tell this was on purpose and I knew I didn't want to go outside as a girl, expressly not here in my neighborhood. "Go on," he said, looking at me like I was crazy. "But it's outside," I said quietly, looking down at my clothing. Dad showed no remorse as he ordered me to go outside and put the stuff into the car. I walked out slowly with the bag. My house was on a dead end, so I wasn't worried about cars passing by more than I was to have the neighbors see me. I ran to the car. The openness of the skirt surprised me and made the weird open feeling of the skirt 100% more awkward to my little boy brain. To one side of my brain it felt good, but the other side my brain yelled at me screaming, "You're a boy, you can't like this! Are you a sissy?" I finally got to the car. I wanted to get back inside. I opened the trunk, threw the bag inside and slammed it down. I came back to the house to find another bag. I repeated the steps until the last, when I spotted a young woman, maybe upper 20s, and a kid about 3 years old. I took a breath and started walking normally, hoping they wouldn't spot me. I picked up the bag and walked, thinking to myself to be a girl. I got to the car and opened the trunk and threw it in. The woman walked by me and didn't even look back and question whether I was boy or girl. I smiled and walked back to the house more confident. Once the Ford was packed, we headed west to Missouri. I watched out the window of the car. To most people this would be a fun family vacation, but to me I was stuck being someone I wasn't. I looked down at what I was wearing. To most girls this would be a normal everyday outfit, but to me it is as alien as I know of. Dash! I woke up to Dad slowing down on the highway. Somehow, I figured out how to fall asleep in the car with the skirt still modestly wrapped around my legs. We took an exit and slowed down into a rest area. I watched the semis were parking on one end of the lot and we were on the other. Dad stopped the car away from the building, meaning we would have to walk. "Okay, Amanda, we're going to go use the restroom real fast." Mom said, "Remember, you're a girl now, so you have to use the ladies' restroom." A new wave of fear came over me. Not only now was I to dress like a girl, but was supposed to use the restroom as one. I slowly opened the door and got out. I smoothed the skirt out and began to walk to the restrooms. My heart was pumping in my chest as I walked. "Think like a girl," I told myself. "Don't become a boy in a dress," I added as I walked inside with my mom right behind me and watching my every move. Once inside I picked out a stall and went inside. I sat down because that's the way I know girls did it. Once done I went to wash my hands. I sighed a quick sigh of relief as my mother came out of her stall. "Ready, Amanda?" she asked, walking back to the door. I wanted to run, but I knew if I did Mom would yell at me for it. Dad was leaning on the side of the car when we came out. I quickly go into the car and waited to leave, noticing that Mom and Dad had better ideas. They started walking towards the tables to eat lunch and I had to give up. I kept looking over my shoulder as families came in and out of the rest stop. Mom gave me a plate with a sandwich and chips. I ate a little of my sandwich in fear that if I didn't my punishment would get worse. I kept my legs crossed in fear that someone might see my yellow underwear. I kept telling myself to be a girl, but I couldn't get past who I was. Finally, after an hour, my prayer was answered and we left the rest stop. Dash! Dad pulled into a hotel and said that Aunt Georgia wasn't going to be home tonight, so we have to spend the night here tonight. I rolled my eyes and unbuckled my seatbelt. This was part of my punishment, I could tell. Mom and Dad walked before me and stopped at the counter as I stood behind them, wanting to be invisible. The lady behind the counter didn't notice me at all, but kept her attention on Mom and Dad as she gave them the room key. Once they turned around, I thanked God that we were going into our private room, in where I can relax. I walked with Mom to the room on the 3rd floor while Dad went and grabbed the bags from the car. I walked in and closed the door. I relaxed for the first time since starting this trip. "Isn't this nice, Amanda?" Mom asked, walking around the room like it was a museum. "Grand," I said in a barely audible whisper. I grabbed the remote and switched on the TV. The Weather Channel came on and I instantly tried to find the channel guide. "Want to go swimming?" Mom asked. I perked up. I love to swim, but I knew there was a catch. "What will I be wearing?" I asked, all sudden concerned that I got myself stuck in an unmanageable situation. "Your blue one," Mom said I didn't catch what Mom just said, just the word yours came through. This was finally my chance to wear boy clothes. Of course, I didn't think it through. I was so focused on finally getting to dress like a boy. Dad came in and Mom opened the suitcase that was meant for me. She pulled out a girl's one-piece swimsuit and showed it to me. My heart sank as she put it in my hand, almost mocking me. It was dark blue with black on the sides. I didn't want to wear it. I don't want to go swimming now, I said, slowly laying back down on the queen-size bed. You're going to look so cute, Amanda, Mom said, smiling at me. Mom, I pleaded with her, but she didn't give. I'd rather jump into the pool naked than wear the girly thing around a hotel. Now Amanda, either you can put this on by yourself or we can help you. Mom said. I froze. The thought of Mom and Dad dressing me again haunted me. I took the swimsuit from Mom and walked slowly to the bathroom. I didn't want to relive the horror of having to get dressed like a 2-year-old again. I slid off the clothes and looked at the swimsuit. I looked for the tag which would help me decide the front when I spotted something odd on the tag. In big letters the name Gracie was visible. Was this also Gracie's swimsuit? How much of these clothes did Gracie let my parents borrow? Apparently, I lost myself way too deep in thought because Mom started to knock on the door. Are you okay in there? She asked. I answered, getting back into reality. I looked back at the swimsuit and swallowed hard before putting my legs through the holes and pulling the suit up and over my chest. I put my arms through the straps and I could feel the straps making an X, which felt weird to me. I looked at the mirror. I looked more like a girl than a boy. My penis didn't even show through the swimsuit. I can't say that I didn't like it. It felt good to wear it. I walked out of the bathroom to where Mom was already in her swimsuit. She handed me a pink butterfly towel. I took it and wrapped it around my waist, but Mom took it. No honey, put it over your chest, she said, wrapping it on me. I walked downstairs with Mom and Dad right behind me. I led the way to the pool where Mom picked us out a spot to sit. No one else was in the pool, so I felt more comfortable to relax into the pool and even play around a little. Mom and Dad just sat and watched me play, enjoying their handiwork. I felt like I could move around better in the swimsuit than I could in my swimming trunks. I even started to like the swimsuit. Then it hit me, I like the clothes, but I didn't like what they represent. I just had to think of them like they were meant to be boys' clothes. Most of all, don't let Mom or Dad get the hint that I like these clothes. But I did like the openness of the skirt and the dresses. I think I can be able to enjoy this punishment. Dash! After an hour of playing, Mom made me leave the pool. I wrapped the towel around me like I was shown and I walked back with my parents. Upstairs, Mom gave me my bedtime clothes, and after a shower I put on the white flowery underwear, a pink nightgown, and got into bed and fell right asleep. Chapter 3, Saturday. I woke up to my Mom and Dad packing their suitcases. I got up and started to walk to the bathroom door when Mom handed me the clothes for the day. I wish that Mother would have thought of something at least more tomboyish, or at least some pants, since my aunt lives on a farm. But instead, Mom gave me a red dress that had a black sash on it. I wanted to ask why I had to wear a dress on a farm, but I didn't want to get Mom or Dad angry, so I hurried to put on the dress and walked back outside so Mom could tie the sash into a neat little bow. She pulled out a pair of tights and made me put them on by myself to show her that I could. The dress shoes took a little help, but after a few tries I got them handled by myself. You're becoming a very good girl, Mom said as I smiled once I got the shoes fastened the right way. I froze, hoping that I wouldn't be known as a girl for the rest of my life. We walked downstairs to the breakfast area and I scanned the breakfast buffet for waffles and Fruit Loops. A boy came up behind me, his plate already full of food. He wore a huge grin and whispered into my ear. "You're cute," he whispered as Mom came up and pulled him away. "I'm sorry," he says that to every girl he sees. His mom said, pulling him away from me into their table. I looked back at Mom and Dad. Mom was giggling while Dad was trying to hold in his laughter. Aunt Georgia's house was located on a farm just 10 miles south of the Iowa border. She lived with her only daughter and my cousin Rebecca, who was a senior in high school. My Uncle Tom died in an accident 2 years ago, leaving Aunt Georgia and Rebecca alone on the 100-acre farm. As we arrived, Rebecca came to the car and greeted Mom and Dad. "And this must be Amanda," she said, smiling. She was told that I was being punished and the details about the punishment, but seeing me wearing the very girly attire made the punishment more real. I wanted to escape, but Mom forced me to walk into the house where Aunt Georgia sat at her dining room table putting candy into plastic eggs for tomorrow morning's party. "Am I Amanda? Don't you look gorgeous in your adorable dress?" Aunt Georgia said, standing up to give me a kiss and to get a good look on what her temporary niece looked like. I wanted to get away, but Mom chimed in and soon everyone was complimenting me on how pretty I was. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't, and I was now stuck at what I thought was the full blunt of the punishment. But of course, there was another turn that I didn't see coming. "So is Amanda entering the Spring Princess competition?" Aunt Georgia asked as she kept looking me up and down. "We don't have a proper Easter dress for her yet," Mom said. "That's one thing Gracie didn't have for us to borrow." I could see Aunt Georgia's eyes widen as she grinned from ear to ear. "Then I think it's time we got her one," she said. I stood in shock as the realization of their evil plan took place. Mom allowed me to wear girly jeans and a pink t-shirt while we headed to the mall. Even though I was happy to finally be out of a dress, it now felt weird to be wearing something as restricting as pants. I kept making sharp moves, still trying to feel the imaginary dress sway. I missed that part and found myself wanting that feeling back. We walked inside, and Aunt Georgia took us to a store called Carrie's Fashion, which from the outside of it looked like any little girl's dream. The display window was filled with mannequins dressed up in the most girlish clothes I ever seen. Above them hangers were hung with more dresses, each worse than the next. I looked over at Mom, who held a steady grip on my hand. I knew I wasn't going to get out of this, and I was now stuck going into a store that back home would get me called a sissy for the rest of my life. Aunt Georgia explained to us that this store is owned by a friend of hers named Carrie. Mom approved and looked down at me. "Ready to pick out your new dress, sweetie?" she asked in her annoyingly sweet voice. I wanted to leave, but I was forced into the store and in the land of girly dreams. Racks of dresses were on display in the center of the store. On the walls, every type of dress I could think of was hung there by size and by color. I wanted to go and to leave, but Mom held a grip on me as she and Aunt Georgia guided us to the front counter. "Georgia, nice to see you. How you are doing today?" the sales lady asked, coming around the corner and hugging her. The two seemed to be good friends, which made me feel more about wanting to leave the shop. "So who's this little cutie?" she asked, looking down at me. I didn't say anything, hoping that Aunt Georgia wouldn't introduce me as Adam. "This is my niece Amanda," she said, patting me on the head. "We are here to find her address." I blushed and backed away as the lady walked around the counter. "Aw, she's adorable," she said, looking at me up and down. I tried to smile, but what came out was a mixture of a frown and a plea for help. "She's a tomboy," Aunt Georgia joked as she watched my face attempt the smile. "Doesn't worry, little one, we will take care of that right quick," the lady said as she took my hand to the wall of dresses and let me look at each one. "Any ideas on which kind of dress?" she asked, more to Aunt Georgia than to anyone. "Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know. I haven't seen Amanda in a dress for so long," Aunt Georgia said, smiling down at me. I wanted to crawl in a hole and hide for the rest of this vacation, but Mom and Aunt Georgia were standing in the way of the exits, trapping me in the store. Carrie led us to the racks of dresses in my size. Above the rack was a sign advertising Flower Girl dresses. "We mostly sell Flower Girl dresses for weddings," Carrie explained as she looked at them. I felt terror as the realization that I would soon be trying to wear one of these came into view. Carrie pulled some off of the rack and put it up to me. "How about if you go try these on now and we will go from there?" she said, handing them to Mom. I followed Mom and Aunt Georgia to the dressing room, regretting every step I made towards it. The dressing room was in two parts. One part was where the family waited as the girl got changed. In the second part, Mom picked out the first dress and I was pushed inside. "I'll get the zipper for you when you come out," she yelled through the doorway. I rolled my eyes and took off the shirt and the pants. I wished I could have stayed in them forever, but I couldn't. I took in a deep breath and decided to look at the dress a little before putting it on. Doing this, I hoped that I could get over my fear of the dress and move on. It was a simple dress that Carrie had found on the discount rack. The top was purple with silky transparent sleeves that puffed up, capping the sleeve. Below the purple sash was a white skirt that flared out with netting to help make it look a little fuller. I slowly slipped it over my head and put my arms in the straps. Before walking out I quickly spun around so that the dress would flare up. I truthfully missed that feeling and I wished I could keep that feeling without the girly clothing. I walked out and stood at the doorway making sure that Mom and Aunt Georgia were the only ones in the room. "You look beautiful," Mom said, standing up to help me out with the dress. She made me walk out a little before zipping up the dress. I prayed that the dress would be too small, but instead the zipper went up all the way and Mom announced that it was the perfect size. I did a slow spin for her and got the next dress. This dress was all white and at the bottom of the skirt were little purple flowers. I quickly put that dress on, more hoping that I wouldn't have to keep dressing up in these stupid dresses for very long. I walked out with the back zipper still undone at the same moment that Carrie came in with more dresses for me to try on. In surprise as she came in, I quickly tried to react and accidentally made the dress fall to the ground, showing of my light blue underwear. I was originally facing Carrie and she could easily see my very not female package as a little lump through the underwear. "You're not a girl, are you?" Carrie asked, leaning on the door frame. I quickly grabbed the dress and tried to put it back on as fast as I could, wishing that I hadn't have done that. All eyes were on me and I was scared. I was so scared I couldn't breathe. I probably just screwed big time and ended the friendship that Aunt Georgia had with Carrie. Mom and I were probably going to be thrown out of the store and possibly the mall. I regretted coming out of the room and wish I had stayed inside for the few seconds that it would have taken for Carrie to come in and give the two adults the clothes. I looked down, not wanting to see their faces, but I knew I had to sometime. I slowly looked up and at Carrie. She still leaned on the door frame. Her arms were crossed as she waited for me to answer. Mom and Aunt Georgia both looked at me, wondering if I was going to answer or not. "No ma'am," I said. I put my head back down and this time the dress stayed on my shoulders, even though now I just wanted to get rid of it. I could hear Carrie slowly walk to the other adults and sit down on the bench next to me. "And why are you wearing a dress?" she asked. The way she asked surprised me, and I looked up to find her smiling sweetly at me. This wasn't what I imagined it would be like. Instead, she seemed more into the concept of boys wearing dresses, or at least me wearing them. "Amanda is being punished," Mom said, breaking the silence. I felt a little better that I didn't have to explain why I was dressed like a girl. But now the reason was going to be leaked out to Carrie now. Mom explained why I was being punished for a while. I sat down on another bench facing them. Occasionally, Carrie would look over to me with a disappointing face when Mom would tell her about one of the times I was called to Dad's office. She ended with Gracie and how she gave some of her clothes to help make this punishment possible. Carrie smiled at me warmly and stood up to get a better look at me. "You look pretty good for a boy in a dress," she said. "You know, I got a dress in my back room that might be better for you. The couple of us was going to have it for their flower girl to wear it. But a week before the wedding they broke up and left the dress paid for here. They told me to give it to someone who deserves it, and I do believe, Mrs. Amanda, you do deserve it." I watched in horror as she walked out of the room to grab the dress. Mom undid the dress and made me walk back to the dressing room and told me to wait until Carrie came back with the new dress. The new dress was light pink and the most girlish of all the dresses that I tried on before. I wanted to eject, but I didn't want to make Mom upset at me, so I took the dress and slid it on. The first thing I noticed when I put it on was that the dress had a lot of layers. More layers than the other dresses that I had tried on hand. Once I found the right layer to put my head through, I quickly got my arms through the straps. The dress had spaghetti straps, which felt awkward to me at first. The dress went down past my knees and just above my ankles. The top part of the dress went all the way down to my waist before a white sash separated the two parts from each other. The bottom was filled with all types of frills that I didn't want, and I could only imagine what I looked like now. I walked out to Mom, who gushed and quickly went over to me and zipped me up, telling me how much she loved the dress. "Please don't!" I begged, but Mom ignored me and turned around to Carrie, telling her that she will take it. I got back into my normal clothes, very thankful to be wearing jeans again and not the dress out of the store. I followed Mom out of the mall, where we left the mall and went back to Aunt Georgia's place.
This is all that remains of the original story. But what I do have is the chapter notes for the remaining chapters. Remember, these were the ideas of the first draft. So, the story could go in a different direction than the final version of Punishment. Chapter 4, Sunday, Amanda does the Easter Princess Contest. Amanda easily wins the Easter Princess contest since she already won the Easter Prince contest a few years earlier and knows what to do to impress the judges. After the contest and the photo are taken, Amanda rides the rides of the carnival before being taken back to Aunt Georgia's house. Chapter 5 Monday, Amanda leaves Aunt Georgia's and heads back to Indianapolis with her family. Once back to Indianapolis, Amanda is tasked with washing Gracie's clothes and puts away all the clothes that Amanda's parents gave her for the punishment. Chapter 6 Tuesday, Adam returns to school as a boy. He spots Gracie on the playground and Gracie looks at him for a second then smirks as she remembers the punishment she had him do. After school he gets home with no one there. He makes his way to the laundry room where Gracie's clothes are in a box. He looks through the clothes and finds the black dress that he had first worn. Without him knowing, his mother is behind him in the doorway smiling as she watched her son. This is the end of the original draft of Punishment. Punishment 2 plans has Adam going back to Aunt Georgia's house. But this time Gracie joins him and his family. Adam has to become a girl for this trip since he was last year's Easter princess and has to crown this year's princess. Gracie and Adam become friends and Gracie wins Easter Princess. Adam, dressed as Amanda, crowns her Easter princess. That is all that is written down about Punishment 2. You can tell that it was in the rough story developments phase back then. So, here's why I am showing you this very rough draft. This draft shows you that a story can change drastically from the draft to the final version. In this draft, there is no Brittany, no Rhea, and no Emily. All these characters were made later in the story process. I needed a girl to make Amanda a little more comfortable, so I made Brittany. I needed an antagonist, so I created Rhea. I needed a friend for the antagonist, so I created Emily. It is important to know that back when I created Emily, Brittany, and Rhea, I didn't know their backstory. It wasn't until I was writing the chapter that dealt with the Easter Princess in 2022. I decided to make Rhea's mother a doctor. Emily now had 2 mothers, and Brittany was now in ballet. The way I write my stories is I do an outline of all the chapters. I consider this to be the skeleton structure of the story. After that, write a rough draft, read it, and then add to it. Then do it again, and again, and again. As you do this, the muscle structure of the story will be made. Characters might be added or deleted as you go, endings to the story might be changed, the story will become more drawn out. Things might be added to the story that you didn't think of later. Once you feel that the story is done being added to, you can start making the final story. Well, that's all I will teach you in this video. I hope that I was able to teach you all something about writing stories and having rough drafts. Thank you for listening. Olivia Julius.